Bill, number 3.
Number 3 for today, Mark. Yes, we're whipping through these, and we've learnt by experience that we need to have 2 or 3 podcasts up our sleeve because things happen. And as our next guest will testify, sometimes it takes a long time to coordinate times and dates.
It does. And sometimes you start feeling like a stalker. But anyway, that's...
And we've just come off a podcast with a gentleman called Amir Katoub, who is an AI expert, has written a book on AI, and tomorrow is launching a new program at RSL... No, not the RSL. RACV Torquay about a new product. And that will be posted in another week's time, I think.
As he left us and waved goodbye, we both looked at each other and went, wow, there's so much to learn.
Well, we both declared that we have to get on to Copilot and educate ourselves. All right. Today we're talking to Karen Foster. Karen is the Mayor of the Moyne Shire. Welcome, Karen. It's been great to finally catch up with you.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's really lovely to be here with you both.
Good.
So, Karen, a normal starting process, where did you go to primary school?
Well, I went to a couple of primary schools in Bairnsdale in East Gippsland.
Oh, the other side of the coast, okay.
Exactly, on the other side of the state to where I currently am. So, so I was a Gippsland girl.
And from primary school to high school, whereabouts?
Yeah, then I went on to Sale High School, which I loved. It was great. I had a really terrific time at high school, and I believe that school is still there. That's still kicking along. They don't call them high schools these days, though.
Colleges, aren't they? Secondary colleges?
That's correct.
I think that's...
And when you were at high school, did you have any sort of aspirations or thoughts about when you grow up, this is what I'm going to do? Was that anything in your head?
Do you know, Mark, I from grade 3 had my sights set on being a journalist, and I don't think I knew what a journalist was in grade 3, but I did go on to fulfil that. So I just went through high school thinking that's what I'm going to do. I got a cadetship at the local newspaper, the Gippsland Times, straight out of high school, and realised couple of years, I actually don't want to be a journalist.
Is the Gippsland Times still going? Do you know?
Yes, it's still there. Absolutely. It's been, it's well over 100 years old, I think, that paper. So still going.
Because down where you are now, I think the Warrnambool Standard is the main paper. Is that right?
It is. It is. The Warrnambool Standard. We still have a daily paper here in Warrnambool, which is extraordinary.
And it's daily, is it? Oh, well, that's pretty cool. That's good.
Yeah. It is.
So whilst you're at high school, did you have any part-time jobs?
I did. When I lived in Sale, Target came to town, and I rushed to line up to become a trainee checkout chick. So in high school, so I did that, which was such a great experience because again, it made me realise I really have to get a career. This is not a good way for me to earn a living. So it was a good experience.
Well, that's interesting because Mark is actually an ex-senior executive at Target. But when we ask people this question about what did you do as a part-time job at school, we can tell a person's age now by the fact that they either did a paper round or they worked at McDonald's or Target or Woolworths or whatever it is.
Yeah, the paper rounds definitely date people.
That does, for sure. But the fact that I was there when Target first arrived in Sale probably dates me as well.
Yeah, so you've got a cadet role at the Gippsland newspaper.
I did.
And so how long were you there for?
I was there for a couple of years and decided after that I was going to go to uni. So I was probably, again, showing my age, on the cusp of a time when it was becoming apparent that you really needed to have a degree. Cadetships were the most common way to get into the profession, I'll say that loosely. My husband, who's a lawyer, tells me there are only 3 professions in the world, but I disagree with him. But it's so I decided to go to Adelaide Uni because my parents had moved over there, and lovely town. So that's what I did. I enrolled in an arts degree and chose a philosophy major.
Oh, okay.
Just because it sounded interesting.
Yep. And so where did that lead you?
Well, it actually, it was, I think everybody should do philosophy, by the way, but it doesn't qualify you for a great deal, so, other than to sit around thinking deeply about things.
Not a well-paying job, I would say. Right?
No, it's probably not. But I did go back to journalism for a little while in Adelaide after I graduated, and it was okay. I still wasn't loving it. It wasn't my passion. So I was a bit lost for a while, but still kept doing it. I enjoyed the fact that it was so variable. Wouldn't know what I was going to get thrown at me in any given day. So there were aspects that I loved, but after a few years, it was really apparent that it was very cyclical. All the same issues were coming around, and I was just not quite as engaged as I wanted to be.
Was that with the Adelaide Advertiser?
No, it was with they were a messenger newspaper group, so the suburban newspapers in Adelaide. But yeah, well, it was fun, a great crew.
Yeah, I was listening to 3OW this morning, and their sports commentator, John Anderson, was talking about one of his first job. I might have been the Herald Sun or something like that in Melbourne, and he was looking after cats and dogs. Was his main portfolio.
There are lots of special niches you can have. But yes, I do remember doing a cat show and thinking, is this what my career has come to?
So where did you go to from there then? What led you to leap out of journalism?
So I came over to Warrnambool after that. And took up a job as a sub-editor at the Warrnambool Standard, but only for a little while. I was there for, I can't even remember, a couple of years perhaps. And then I moved to the dark side of advertising and marketing, as most old journos seem to do in the end.
And who was that with?
It was with a very small agency in Warrnambool, and I ended up starting my own agency about three years later. So that was
O2, wasn't it, or something?
That was
How's
right,
my
Bill.
memory? Right.
Your memory's great, and you might recall, Bill, that you actually provided me with lots of business advice and mentoring in my early days of O2 Media. So. And I think that was the very last time that I was employable by anybody else. So that was 20 years ago. I've never had a real job since.
Well, you've certainly had a few tipping points, as we call it, obviously, over that period of time.
Yes.
So I think O2, you actually had a team of people working for you, and then you made a decision that there was another way of doing it. Is that right?
That's the polite way of saying I had things fell over. Correct, Bill.
I wasn't going to say that.
Thank you for being kind.
There was a change of direction. That's all.
It was a change. It was, and in fact, O2 Media still does exist. So at its peak, and we were in operation for about 14 years, and I had about 10 staff at that time at its peak. And I made quite a few mistakes along the way. The biggest one was I really became so close to all of the team. They were family members to me. And my biggest priority became keeping all of them employed. So that was 10 families in my view.
Yep.
And even when the writing was on the wall. So I made lots of errors, and it was all down to me. So it sort of fell over. I just literally ran out of steam. That was
the heart ruling the demarcation lines of being a leader in a business.
Correct, absolutely. And when I look back, Bill, it is so clear to me that's exactly what happened. And I don't regret it because things have been fabulous ever since. But it was such. I was really. I had my blinkers on. Had my blinkers on.
But it's called learned experience, isn't it?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. You've learned from it. There's no regrets. It's just that's what happened, and you move on.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh. But I will say, it's something that we don't talk a lot about. And when things don't go right or according to plan, I don't see it as failure. But we don't talk about it enough.
No,
and that's why I'm always happy to be open and frank.
But there's a lesson out of everything, Karen.
Yeah,
and in fact, I just in a previous podcast this morning, I mentioned to a lady that I put a post last night on LinkedIn, and it was about reflection.
Oh, I saw that.
right? And that's what you've got to do. You can reflect on it, but don't let it eat you alive. That's really what it's about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there was a time, I will say, and again, in the interest of being open about it, I did feel a lot of shame for a while. But now I think, it's okay. It's all right to be human. And if I talk about it more, perhaps other people who've experienced it, or who maybe I can even help people who to avoid experiencing something like I did. Just we should talk about it much more openly, I think.
Yeah, there's plenty of us that have had setbacks, and and I've experienced some major setbacks. But you wake up the next morning, you pick yourself up, and you say, right, I've just got to get on from here.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mindset issue, but
is.
it can be a very emotional time in life. So now you're sitting down there as the mayor of the Shire. How did that all come about?
Yeah, well, interesting. So I chose to stay here in this area because this is where I've raised my family. I love it. I live in Port Fairy, which is, I don't know if you've been here.
Oh,
but
yes, lovely spot.
It's a beautiful place to live. So I really wanted to be here. And so my business failure happened a little bit just before COVID. And so, which was kind of nice for me in a selfish way, because I could use that quiet time to really reflect and think, well, what's next? What do I want to do? I know I want to live here. What skills have I got? So I sort of retrained myself through COVID as a professional coach and mentor, and really sort of focused on doing that sort of thing. But also along the way, I had joined a few boards. So that happened some years before COVID. And I was starting to realise I had a bit of a fascination for governance, which I have learned is a conversation killer at dinner parties, but it's still really fascinating for me. So I was, I joined a few boards. So I had about 3 directorships, I think, and really loving that. And then I've always had a fascination since my journo days with local government, because I used to have to go and sit through council meetings all the time.
Yep.
And I was looking at my council, which for, I think it was around 16 years, had only ever had one woman on council. And I was thinking, I don't get this. Why is our region like this? Because women still make up more than 50% of the population here. Why are we so underrepresented? And talking to a few people about that, I started to think, well, if I want to see some change, I really need to sort of put my money where my mouth is. So I stood for a council election in 2020 and somehow got elected.
Wow.
But here's the irony, though. I became the only woman on that council.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm sure you've fixed that by now, though.
I have. So this term, I'm delighted to say there are 4 women and 3 men. So we are in the majority this time.
So what stops, and it's a discussion that happens in July. I mean, it's an election, so you've got to have candidates that put their hands up and want to have a go. But what stops women wanting to get involved? Is there a block? Is it...
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, Mark. And it's one that I have asked a lot of women, because I was really intent on getting more women to stand this time around.
Yeah.
The blocks are... They vary, obviously, from individual to individual, but there's a sense that they'd have to take time out from their career, which is not financially a good thing. Yeah. When a lot of them have had families or have young children and they've already had to take that career break, so they see that as detrimental for them. There's also this weird thing around here, a bit of a tall poppy thing. I don't know if that happens in Geelong too. But,
oh, no, it's a country town issue.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's sad. It's really sad that people feel, oh, no, I can't do that because people will think, oh, I've got tickets on myself, which is extraordinary because it's nothing to do with that. It's it's wanting to make a difference and give back to community in some way.
And just as a side issue there, you're now mentoring for LGA, your local government, is it? Councillors and officers?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about
yes.
that.
So I'm a mentor for ALGWA, which is an awful acronym, Australian Local Government Women's Association.
Okay, yep.
So I had a mentor in my first term and really valued and benefited from that. So I was really happy to be a mentor this time around. So that's I've got a really lovely counsellor who's assigned to me for the 4-year term, and we have some great conversations. But mentoring comes pretty naturally to me through my coaching work, and I just love it. It's really fun.
So, workload for a counsellor. How many hours a week does it take on average?
Oh, well, as a counsellor, it can vary from about at a minimum of a day a week, and you can really put as much time in as you want. But as mayor, it's probably pretty close to full time most weeks. Yeah, it's every day I'm doing things. I'm out and about, and lots of weekends as well. So it is a bit of a time impost, that's for sure.
And that becomes the issue, doesn't it? Because if you've got the right person with the right skills, but they could earn twice as much not being mayor.
That's right.
Therein lies the issue.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. No. Well done on the path you took to get there. What's the biggest issue you believe is facing your council at the moment?
Oh, well, we're in the grip of a drought here in southwest Victoria, as you would know.
Yeah, we're well aware of that, yes.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of advocacy around that to support our farmers on lots of levels. Just yesterday I was in a small community of Karamat talking to a group of people, locals there, about what they need. We're talking all the time to government. We're constantly writing letters and constantly trying to be a voice for our region around that. But we're also in Moyne, on a more positive note, I guess, we're really leading the energy transition here too. So we've got around 600 wind turbines and more, probably twice as many on the way. We're playing a big part in the transition, the renewable energy transition. So, which is not loved by everybody, but it's certainly a bit divisive. But it's still, something that I find really interesting.
Actually, it was interesting. I was driving down around Port Campbell a couple of weeks ago and listening to people ring in on the ABC, talking about the drought. And I didn't realise how deep-seated it was until listening to farmers ringing and the stresses and strains they were under. But also the divisiveness of wind farms. There were farmers ringing in saying, hey, it's helping me get through the drought because I've got this income from having this wind tower on my farm. And others ringing in saying, I can't put sheep near there because the blades might fall off. And it struck me that there's a lot of misinformation, I suppose. There's what's true, what's not true. It was interesting just listening.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Mark. There is a lot of misinformation. It's incredibly emotive, and I understand that. I get it. There are people who, the deals that wind farm companies strike with landholders is confidential. So we don't know what individual farmers receive, and we don't know what neighbours receive. But we do know that some people are stuck looking at them and they don't receive a great deal, or that in some cases they receive nothing. And so it is very, very divisive. So I totally get that.
And you're on an interesting section of the coast too, because I used to be on the Western Coastal Board to declare. And I remember us having a tour through the Moyne Shire and looking at the seawall at Port Fairy, where all those very large rocks and boulders were being put to protect the coast, to stop the sea coming through and taking out the middle of Port Fairy. So
yes,
you're right. It's a very emotive issue, and I went to a presentation recently about offshore wind farms. By the CEO of Geelong Port. So that's the next iteration, I think, and you probably be fully aware of the designated areas along the coast.
Indeed, we have one right off Port Fairy, so there's exploration works happening there right now.
There was another thing I picked up as we stalked you, as we do on LinkedIn, the Great Southwest Leadership Program for Rural Women. What's that about?
So that's actually for men and women. It's Leadership Great South Coast is its official title. And it's a 12-month leadership program that's offered in our region every year. And I was a founding member of that board and chair for about 10 years, I think. And it's still going really strong. And despite having lost all of its government funding. So leadership programs across the state, most regions have one of these. You've got one in Geelong as well.
Committee for Geelong, we're running it, yep.
Yeah, that's right. And we don't have a committee for down here. And we lost all of our government funding. So I'm so happy to see that local businesses are keeping it going. But, it is a year-by-year proposition, unfortunately, because of that.
That's good. Now, looking through your council area, and you go from southern Grampians to Mortlake down your way where you live, is there a brain drain of young people out of the area like we read about in other areas?
There absolutely is. I've got two children, mid-20s, and they both flew off to Melbourne at the first opportunity, and that's a very common pattern. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I wish that more of them would come back again, would come back and take up careers here, because we really need young people, we need young families in our schools and in our communities, but to have those skills as well, because I know at Moyne Shire, and I know lots of businesses struggle at times to find the right people to fill the positions that we have. Yep. So if there's some program that we could utilise to attract young people back, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, and that becomes a succession issue for business owners too, doesn't it?
It really does, Phil.
And I've given a couple of talks recently about succession at various forums, and I'm doing one next month actually at Marcus Oldham with their final year students, and really about succession and how do you start the conversation with your parents, on this topic, and to have a robust and honest conversation about the future, because the baby boomers are disappearing
off the
and who's going to take over next?
It's an excellent point, Bill, and I think if those conversations aren't had, I think sometimes young people just make the assumption, well, there's nothing here for me. There's no opportunity. I just need to go. I need to go somewhere else.
So in your role as the chair, you're still chair of Western Vic Primary Health?
No. I've finished my tour of duty with the Primary Health Network, which was a really interesting one as well.
So did you see the same issues there with doctors, nurses attracting people down into the area?
Absolutely did. And I was also chair of our hospital here in Port Fairy. Exactly. It's a real issue getting people to come here, from particularly skilled workers, getting people to move here. First of all, there's nowhere for them to live because we've got a shortage of housing, and what we do have is very expensive, particularly along the coast.
Yep.
But there's because I feel there's a perception that the opportunities aren't available outside the city, and my experience is quite the opposite. There's so much here if you'll look and if you'll be a bit creative about it.
Yep. Interesting.
We have a valuer, property valuer we have a monthly private directors group, and we have breakfast once a month. And he was telling us he's had to do a number of valuations of regional hospitals in the western region of Victoria. And he said that there are hospitals sitting there with rooms empty and operating theatres empty. And they just can't get staff.
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm a bit out of the loop at the moment, but I'm not surprised that's happening because, exactly. It's very, very difficult to get staff. And, if I can use a very strange and stark example about that, you'll be as familiar with voluntary assisted dying, the fact that we have that in Victoria. But it's a real issue for people in the regions, because one of the conditions of being able to access that I guess you call it a service, is that you have to have a face-to-face appointment with a specialist who's qualified in the particular area of your illness. And we're finding people here in our region can't, because they're too sick to travel to Melbourne to get that face-to-face access and meeting with a specialist. And there are no specialists available in our region. So I guess that's a bit of a side and stark example. But yeah,
especially with people that are making a really difficult decision.
Of course.
That need the support.
That applies across the board. I was on the Horsham Hospital Board for a number of years, and now with the amalgamation of these hospital groups, you've got people at Horsham having to go to Ballarat. And as you say, some of them are just too sick to get there, and they give up in the end, which is absolutely tragic.
It's awful. I mean, it's the final indignity almost, isn't it, that you can't make the final choice.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't see an answer in the future, but we can only lobby for it. Now,
correct.
What's next for Karen Foster?
Well, I'm actually planning my next moves right now, Bill. So I think, as I said before, I haven't had a real job for over 20 years. I'm not employable anymore, and that's fine. I know that about myself. So I'm really sort of ramping up my own business, keeping it nimble and flexible this time. But I'm doing leadership development, leadership training, particularly for women. I've just really enjoy working with women and young women in particular. I really love seeing the difference and the evolution, and it's so rewarding. So that's where my real passion is at the moment. So I'll stay with local government. I've still got 3.5 years left of this current term. So I'll stick around there, but I'm just really interested in working with leaders.
So how do people find you, Karen? If people listening to this say, oh, we live down this way and we'd like to have some training, how do they reach you?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mark. So my website address is o2advisory.com.au, and I'm also on LinkedIn, as you mentioned earlier.
Yep. So and just Google Karen Foster and
Correct.
Probably put @Moyne next to it and you'll pop up.
And Karen,
absolutely
for your interest, I'm still using the logo from my family business that you did for me all those years ago.
Oh, Bill, that's so lovely. I'm so delighted to hear that.
I recall that I asked you to do a logo, and you said, "What's the scope?" And I said, "I don't have one. You just go and just think it through." Right.
Oh, I'm so good. You must have been happy with that. That has made my day, Bill.
Good on
Thank
you. Karen, lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, Karen.
And good luck.
Oh, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mark. It was a delight speaking with you both.